People need to understand we're not voting on anything. We're not authorizing it. We're not agreeing to it. We're just getting a cost, from different organizations of what they would charge to begin this initial step.
Palm Coast Vice Mayor Ed Danko referring to the possibility of two different types of city audits.
Discussion a year ago by the Palm Coast City Council introduced the idea of a forensic audit to determine the financial health of the city's departments to satisfy constituents. In a presentation at the recent City Council meeting, the cost for such a focused audit would be very costly.
I would be in favor of having the next council put any full forensic audit on a ballot before we spend that $500,000 plus.
Councilman Nick Kloufas says whether the city pursues a risk assessment, which is less expensive, or a forensic audit for $500,000 should be the job of the next sitting council.
If they're given a proposition, especially if 60 days from now the RFP were to go out and it comes back before us, which I don't think would be correct at all, and then the risk assessment comes back and says, hey, here's your risk, how do we expect them to make a decision on that being so new? So this is one of the things where I would like to see the next council get fully up to speed the same way that we are.
Councilwoman Teresa Pontieri says the financial advisor for the city should take the first small movement forward.
Leave it to staff to look at what he gives us, and then if that helps to more narrowly define that scope, I think that's probably what we need. I think that this has to be the natural first step.
In the meeting, council decided to wait to see an example of a risk assessment performed in another city by the proposed financial advisor to determine all that would be involved in a risk assessment. For Flagler's Local Morning News, I'm Karen Johnson.
Good morning, Flagler County. I'm Rich Carroll. You're listening to Flagler's Morning News on Wednesday, September 11th.
The Founding Fathers put this language in there specifically to keep the budgets in line.
Palm Coast mayoral candidate Cornelia Manfrey is weighing in on the controversial charter amendment.
In November, voters will decide whether to remove from the city's charter 25-year-old borrowing limitations that cap the amount at $30 million payable over a maximum of 3 years.
I do believe that the $15 million could be increased. However, I am vehemently against this charter amendment. I think it is misleading and it allows the city council to do extraordinary approval on any amount of money. That should come from the voters.
Manfrey says she could support a differently worded amendment.
I am not about a free-for-all, a carte blanche. Any amount of money that is necessary, it has to be dignified and it has to be spelled out, it has to be specific. This is wide open.
Manfrey admits future large-scale projects will require the city to find funding.
We have to get the infrastructure in control. And yes, may require either state money or borrowing power. But this amendment, I think, is too wide open. When the city council has to vote on something, the language should be saying it has to be specific, term, rate. Everything has to be spelled out.
For Flagler's Morning News, I'm Daryl Moody.
This local news is a service of Flagler County's Toyota dealer, Beaver Toyota US 1 St. Augustine, here to wow you. Last weekend was a busy one for Flagler County Sheriff's deputies. Flagler County Sheriff Rick Staley with your weekend roundup.
Over the weekend, deputies made 14 arrests, handled 844 calls for service, and made 235 traffic stops. This is a reminder to always lock your car and hide or remove things of value from your car, because over the weekend in the R section, we had a number of cars burglarized. We did get security video from neighbors that showed 3 individuals wearing hoodies, masks, and probably gloves entering vehicles during the early morning hours. Remember, if you see something, say something by calling our non-emergency number 386-313-4911. Deputies also conducted a traffic stop for a traffic violation and determined that Jeremy Wells, age 30 of Maryland, had previously been arrested for driving with a suspended license, but he was on the road again. But this time it was a moving pharmaceutical store, and both he and his passenger were arrested for various narcotic violations along with driving on a suspended license. Another busy weekend and great job by our deputies.
And now you're up to date on Flagler's Morning News. I'm Rich Carroll.